Good morning, ladies and gents out there in Warrior Nation. It's your old pal Rich Brown coming to you live with Mr. Mike Chesne. And here in just a moment, I'm going to read his very impressive bio. But before I do, once again, my name is Rich Brown, retired Marine Corps officer, former police officer, and special operations officer. And we have a really good guest this morning. I think you guys are going to learn a lot. While folks are jumping on, I'll go ahead and read Mike's bio. Mike Chesne founded Tecton after a 25-year career in the United States Army Special Operations. As chairman and chief of innovation, he leads the company's vision while actively pursuing scientific research to expand Tecton's product portfolio and intellectual property. At Tecton, Mike developed the biochemical design of the Tecton Ketone molecule. He established methods for its formulation and large-scale manufacturing, emphasizing energy efficiency and environmental sustainability, utilizing organic byproducts and enzymes with no hazardous waste. Before Tecton, Mike founded an emergency medical supply company that produced trauma kits for the United States military and NATO allies, many of which are still standard issue today. He then shifted to global healthcare consulting, working with ministries of health in Afghanistan, Iraq, the UAE, and Algeria. His contributions included developing Afghanistan's first nursing curriculum, restructuring its healthcare system, and helping design Algeria's version of the Food and Drug Administration. His military experience, particularly with DARPA, provided him with a profound understanding of scientific research. In 2012, after learning about DARPA's funded project seeking a performance-enhancing nutritional supplement, he explored exogenous ketones developed by National Institute of Health and Oxford University, which led him into biomedical innovation. Apart from his scientific work, Mike is a motivational speaker at veterans events and health symposiums. His military service earned numerous awards, and he served worldwide in elite units, including combat zones. He continues to serve veterans through charity work and leadership roles on multiple nonprofit boards. Passionate about helping others, Mike remains committed to supporting veterans and healthcare initiatives. He splits his time between Orlando, Florida, with his wife, son, and grandsons, and Alexandria, Louisiana, with his family. His life is marked by service, innovation, and a dedication to improving human health and well-being. Mike, that is a heck of a resume, my brother.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. It's a blessing, absolutely blessing to be able to have done all these things and to continue to help people. So,
Yeah. When I retired from the Marine Corps, I was done. And it sounds like you were just getting started, my brother.
well, I thought I was done. You know how that works. Obviously, since you're here doing something, you found another mission as well. So that's the key. You have to find something else that keeps you motivated and keeps you going.
That's exactly right. I think people like us and a lot of folks that are going to be watching this morning and listening to the podcast to come, I think they can definitely relate. I've mentioned on here before, my brother, when he's a former Marine cop and retired from the Coast Guard, and he just went to the state academy to be a probation officer. He just couldn't put it down.
Yeah, you can't do it. Yeah, I understand completely. Understand completely.
Mike, tell us about your time in the Army and your journey into SF. What was that like?
Well, I joined the army right straight out of high school. So I was a young man, 17 years old, right out of high school, enlisted and went to Fort Lewis, Washington, as my first tour of duty. Spent time there, went to Army's Airborne School, Ranger School, um, and just wanted to do something a little bit more. So afterwards, I went to the Special Forces Assessment and Selection process in 1990. Ended up in the 5th Special Forces Group, spent 10 years at Fort Campbell with the 5th Special Forces Group. Then ended up getting selected and moving on, and I went to work for one of the special mission units at Fort Bragg. I was there for the remainder of my career.
Okay.
So
Were you an 18 Delta in the SF?
I,
Or?
I started out as an 18 Bravo Special Forces weapons sergeant.
Mhm.
It's an interesting kind of story. Um, they give you a wish list, and I know you remember this from being in the military. They're like, what jobs would you like? If you get your choice, and so they give you four choices, and I put 18 Delta, 18 Delta, 18 Delta. So I wanted to be a medic, no matter, that was the deal. Well, when I went through the selection process, I was a young Army Ranger qualified E5, had my expert infantryman badge, and I was the guy they wanted to be a weapons sergeant. I was not the guy they wanted to be a medic. So I ended up getting selected and going to the weapons course because what the instructor asked, when I said, hey, I wanted to be a medic, he said, well, you can be an 18 Bravo, which is a weapons sergeant, or you can go back and be an 11 Bravo. I said, okay, I'll see you in a couple of months. And that was it. That was the end of that conversation. I ended up going to the weapons course first. And after a couple of years, at fifth group, I volunteered to go back and become an 18 Delta. So another 18 months of school.
Now, with the SMU, were you an assaulter, or what was your role over there?
I was one of the Delta medics.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, and how long did you spend over there, Mike?
Almost 8 years.
Almost 8 years. During one of the busy times of that special mission unit's time, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Probably I couldn't have gone at a better time. I went right after 9/11. So I was there for most of the really fun times, I guess you would say, for military guys, obviously, from the unit. So yes.
Yeah, and I tell you, the TCCC and all the advancements in trauma casualty care is just astounding. I mean, you guys were innovating at light speed. Did that have anything to do with the direction that your post-military career took?
Absolutely. In fact, that's one of the things that my wife and I started a company right before I retired, doing emergency medical kits, and they were all based on what we needed as medics on the ground in combat. All the things, the little things that made your job quicker, gave you a better chance to help people out. So that's what got us started in it, and we did that for a couple of years, and it was a lot of fun. My wife got to meet a lot of people in the industry, being part of it. So yeah, it was very nice, and that kind of set a direction for which way I was going to go, and then also got me involved in healthcare and healthcare consultant afterwards.
Okay. Years ago, we got with a company. Do you know a company called Mountain Man Medical?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Yeah.
I've heard of them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have a relationship with Mountain Man Medical for years, and we developed a trauma kit. So if you guys are listening to Mike this morning and you're like, trauma kit, I need one of those for my F-150. Click the links in today's show notes and pick one up, because I'm really excited about not just that you've been in, and I do want to ask you the question, how did your experience lead to developing that trauma kit and getting it out there to the military and NATO allies? I know there's a lot of sales and marketing that go into getting that in front of those folks, but I'm not interested in that per se. What I'm interested in is, how do you pick and choose between what goes in those kits? Like, because it's all about weight and size and accessibility and all that kind of stuff. Because you want to have a big unit one or whatever they call those bags nowadays, but you got to pick and choose, man. How do you do that, Mike?
Experience, straight up training over and over, doing the same things, and figuring out what pieces and parts of your kit are the most important. And it's not just, I didn't develop all of this on my own. It's from listening to other people and their after actions and what it was that they used and did that made their job better and made it more efficient. That was the kind of the key for it, is how can you make these kits the most efficient way? So if you had a gauze that you were going to put into this thing, you don't want to put it in there in the package that it came in, so that now you have to take the time to open the package, then rip it out, then start. So what we did was take those components, put them in there in the most accessible way. So as soon as you opened it, you could get to the gauze. As soon as you opened it, you could grab the tourniquets. As soon as you got to it, the most important life-saving pieces were right there and readily available.
I also want to welcome Brian onto the show. Johnny King is on from beautiful Kentucky. My lovely bride, Miss Lisa, is on, and Mark Hamilton is on from Ontario, Canada. Gal is on in the Philippines. Good morning, Gal. Thank you to those watching us live and everyone who will listen in the days and weeks to come. One of the things I heard that the special mission units started, probably before anybody, was as soon as you got a guy who's had an IED blast or something like that. And I know one of my friends that died from wounds he received in an IED. It was really from the infection of all those blast materials going into his body and contaminating the system. And I think that you guys were some of the first ones that immediately upon it. This is what I've heard. I don't know. Wasn't a special mission guy. My 23 years in the Marine Corps was completely conventional. So let's be clear. But you guys would start administering antibiotics almost immediately. Is that true?
That is true. Yeah, we were the first ones to be able to do that.
And what was the efficacy of that, Mike?
Um, it turned out that some of the things that we did, if the person could, we did oral antibiotics right away.
Mm.
So, and it was very effective. I mean, as far as I know, none of the casualties that we sustained, who survived their injuries, had any kind of infections. And so we leaned way forward with the type of antibiotics that we were using, and also different bandages that had antibiotic properties. So yeah,
Are those
you're absolutely right. That's something that we did.
So like the Curlex gauze and things of this nature. So you're saying that I'm unaware of this, that there's gauze out there that's impregnated also with antibiotic properties?
No, but there are other bandages that had, at the time we were using nano encapsulated crystal bandages, or silver crystal bandages. So
Okay.
those things have antibiotic properties. So there are different ways that we were doing that.
I got you. It's the silver. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Tell us about your time with DARPA. When I read your bio, that kind of jumped off the page at me. If you could explain what DARPA is and then kind of take us into your time working with those folks.
Absolutely. So DARPA is the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, and what they do is they look way in the future when it comes to research and development. They're not trying to develop things for today. They're trying to develop things really for the future. I mean, it's the place where the internet was invented. So that's the kind of thing. The GPS that we currently have, GPS systems that we have, all of these things were developed through DARPA and then commercialized. So it's I want to say it has one of the largest budgets in the Department of Defense, because it is they do look forward for their research. But the way I got involved in it is pretty amazing. In the late 1990s, Fifth Special Forces Group had one of their operational detachments that was they had a regular mission, which is whatever special forces do, foreign internal defense, doing different urban combat, whatever it was, those normal missions. But then they were tasked to be the research and development arm for U.S. SOCOM, for United States Special Operations Command. So that secondary mission, any new equipment that was coming into special forces, and it could be in any realm, uh, went through that team. That detachment tested that equipment in hot weather, cold weather, underwater, in free fall, whatever it was. Tested all of that equipment. So it was a very specialized team, and it was split. Half of the team were free fall qualified. The other half of the team were dive qualified, and some people were both. And that allowed us to test in any environment. So we were tasked with doing the research for any new weapons that were coming in, any new gear, equipment. So it was a very, very interesting job. And it's a one detachment, 12 operational special forces soldiers, a regular setup. There was no difference in the TO and A, the TO and E, the equipment that you had, your normal training. So some of the programs that we worked on were, as you can imagine, just about anything. When the M4 rifle, I'm dating myself obviously, but when the M4 rifle was being uh, integrated into the military and into special operations, they had all the new things that were being put on it, the lights, the ACOG scope that was on it, all those different pieces. We were the ones that went out and tested all those and then helped to decide which pieces went into those kits. All the new clothing, cold weather clothing, new uniforms. We tried those. We also did the free fall safety equipment. We tested that. We tested. One of the ones that I was involved in was the ground robotics program. So a lot of the uh, ground platform robotic pieces that are out there today were all in their infancy when we were doing that, and we tested these things for how much power they had, what we could do with them, what special forces could use them for, and that was the kind of thing. So, and DARPA was a big part of that. They funded a lot of those projects and programs, and so we were able to work with them quite a bit.
Now, Delta has its own, I don't know if it's an entire squadron, but they have their own assets that do that kind of testing stuff, right?
Right, they do. But this was in on the white side in fifth special force group. It was an amazing uh opportunity, and it was a great team of it was a handpicked group of some of the guys that are, the the men that I served with on that detachment. One of them was the team sergeant from the 12 strong horse
Oh,
soldiers.
really? Yeah.
One of those guys was there. One of my other teammates was the first Silver Star awarded in the War on Terror. So I mean, this is a group of really stellar individuals. So it was really nice. It was great being on a team like
I can
that
only
and doing that
imagine
work.
getting your hands on that kind of stuff and getting to play with it and break it and see what works and what doesn't work. That's awesome. Was there anything that you're like, man, this is really great piece of kit, but just did not make it into the Army's inventory?
Um, yeah, one of the things that we worked on is that's a great question. I love that. One of the pieces of kit that we started working on was a fused infrared and thermal set of night vision goggles, and the ones that we were working on at the time. Um, it's interesting how they did it. It was a group of scientists out of MIT that came up with the technology, and they wanted to come and show it to us and say, "Hey, this is what we've got. Can you guys check it out? And DARPA had funded the program, so that's where it was at. And they came to Fort Campbell, and the computer system and everything, all the stuff that ran and integrated the thermal and IR, they needed a semi truck to
Oh,
bring it in.
smart.
And I told, and I said, "Hey, it's got to be able to fit on your head,
All right.
and we can't replace anything else that's in our backpack in our rucksacks. So you tell me how I'm going to fit all of that stuff in there." And they worked on it for a couple of years, but when I left there, it was still not a fielded piece. But it was very interesting when you looked at everything in together with the infrared technology, which is when you're doing night vision goggles, is green, and then almost a full color spectrum of your thermal as well. It was very interesting because it helps you out quite a bit.
Everybody's watching and will be listening is probably familiar with virtual reality, but augmented reality is a whole nother can of worms. Have you got to play with any of the augmented reality
I have
headsets?
not. That's something interesting I would like to see.
Yeah, oldest son was a research scientist at Sandia National Laboratories, and we got to play with some of that stuff. And I mean, it was just like I had no idea that kind of technology was out there. I mean, you could create something in space and leave it in 3-dimensional space and go away and come back and it's still there. Or and then you could pick it up and put it in the refrigerator and somebody else wearing the goggles, there it is. And you could see through walls with this stuff. I mean, the stuff that DARPA is doing and some of the other national laboratories is years beyond what any of us out here would consider. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Light years ahead.
That's right.
Like I said, I think their projects that they look at are in the future. They're looking at 5 years down the road, 10 years, even 30 years down the road. What, where will the technology we're working on today be at that time? And then what are just, I mean, like black swan
Yes.
events that we can pick up on, like the ability for them to the GPS systems that we have today. I mean, I worked on some of the very first ones, and they were not your cell phone that you can walk around and work on. They were huge. They were very heavy and clunky and not that accurate. But it was the beginning of that technology. And now look, everybody's got it. Everybody uses, Google Maps, and they use their phone. They use GPS. I mean, people don't even go to the grocery store sometimes without putting it in their GPS and driving in their car to get there, even though they know where they're going. So it's something you use every single day.
Well, my phone, I'm sure yours probably is too. And many people out there, it has trained itself to my pattern of life. So it knows I go to the gym at a certain time, and it's like I get in the car and start it up. It's like 24 minutes to this address, and it's like, how'd you know I was going there?
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I remember before GPS, we had I don't know if you guys had it in the Army. We had PLARs. Do you remember that?
Yes, absolutely.
We had PLARs as a means to create like a grids network system that would integrate with our maps. And then for whatever reason, when we assaulted into Kuwait in 1991, PLARs did not work. And we used this new thing I'd never heard of before called GPS.
Mhm.
What is this? Like, it has something to do with satellites. Trust me, it works. But how come you didn't tell me about this until right now? It would have been fun to actually play with it beforehand, but we figured it out on the fly. So when you were working in this, I think you said 15-man team, Mike, and you guys are testing all this stuff for DARPA, and I'm sure you're writing reports on how well it could function for you guys. Were you the medical piece, or were you looking at across the board everything?
Across the board, everything. So the way that the special forces teams work, it's two split teams of 6 people each. Each one has an officer or warrant officer on it, a team sergeant or an intel sergeant there, and then one of each one of the primary MOSs: medical, communications, engineering, and weapons. And so the way that it works when you're on a special forces ODA, you have, and it's just like being anywhere. Your primary job is to be just a special forces soldier, so you can teach, train any one of the jobs that are out there. Also, you're a force multiplier is what the jobs are, but you don't necessarily work in your job specific field every day. Most of the things you do, or everybody does them. So you're really you're the medic when things go bad, or for planning and those kind of things. Once you start doing your missions, you may have a completely separate job. I mean, you may be an assault team leader, you may be you may be whatever job they have for you, but it's not necessarily doing your MOS specific job, or military occupational specialty. For people that didn't understand that, I try not to use too many acronyms now that I'm retired. It's
Yes.
hard for people to pick up what we're putting down. So but yeah, so I was the one of the medics. There were 2 medics on the team. I was one of those, but at the same time, I mean, I worked all the free fall equipment. I worked the ground robotics. I worked on the SOP mods kit is what they called it back then. It's all the different uh, pieces and attachments that could go onto your M4 weapon system. A lot of clothing programs. So it wasn't specific to being a medic. No.
And it's amazing how that stuff DARPA creates it. I'm imagining companies come to DARPA with, we've got this new thing, and here's how it's going to help, and we need funding to get it off the ground. Whether that's at the university level, I know my cousin married a guy with a PhD who worked at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and this would have been 1994, 1995. NSW came out and wanted a better sniper rifle, one that had a first hit probability in excess of 90-ish%, whatever. And he was telling me over beers back then what they were doing with lasers and trying to make this thing work for them, for their client. But it trickles down eventually to law enforcement. And again, I've been in the military and I've been on law enforcement side of the house, and I still do some training with law enforcement. And, it's funny, by the time they get it, by the time it's truly out there on the mainstream market for civilians and law enforcement, it's been around for a decade, I would imagine, maybe more. And you guys have worked all the bugs out of it along the way, I'm imagining.
That's true. That's exactly right. We a lot of times the guys that get together, different from Marines, Navy, Army guys all get together, and they say the same thing about the Marines. Unfortunately, they're like, "Hey, once the Army gets rid of it and it moves out, then we get it." And so
Yes.
it's interesting you saying that about law enforcement people. I never thought about that, but yeah, by the time it trickles down, the technology already developed. It's been frozen, it's been heated, it's been put underwater, it's been whatever it was. It's been tested that way before you get it. So
Yeah, and we have folks like you guys, and there's a new generation out there doing it right now at some SF unit or some MARSOC unit or what have you. But now let's talk about what you're doing now, Mike. Tecton. How did the Tecton come about? And I understand that you guys are working on biochemical design of ketone molecules. We got a lot to unpack there, my friend, because all that stuff is way above my pay grade.
yeah. So I tend to go a little more scientific when I talk about it. So I'm going to try very hard not to.
And dumb it
So
down
here's
for us. We're crayon
here's
eaters.
here's what happened. And I got blown up while I was over in Iraq, and at the time when it happened, we didn't understand traumatic brain injuries. We didn't know what they were. I mean, this was early. It was in '04 and then again in '05. So we didn't understand what it is, what's going on, how does it affect you. We just all thought, man, I'm a little dizzy today, I'm a little off, and everybody was the same way, so nobody thought anything of it until later on. I started developing issues, short-term memory loss and migraine headaches and a bunch of light sensitivity, a bunch of different things, and trying to figure out, well, what's wrong, what happened. I don't remember anything that would be that bad, but successive blasts over time, plus the IEDs and everything. I had a pretty bad traumatic brain injury. It was bad enough that I was medically retired for it.
Mm.
Took about 2 years trying to figure out a better way to to train my brain where it would start working right again. But at the time, it wasn't happening. So I ended up being medically retired from the Army. Well, part of that, the rehab process of that, I went to an amazing program that they ran in Houston, and it was a combination where uh, we went to a Tier Herman Memorial uh, Hospital, and we did it was not inpatient, but we were there 7 days a week, getting trained on how do you rewire your brain after a brain injury. And that was it was a great program. It was called Project Victory back then, but you were in the same rehab with anybody else that was being rehabbed for brain injuries that were civilians. I mean, I had a lady that was a senior executive at Shell that was there, who was in a car accident but had gotten a brain injury. I had a bull rider. I had a cheerleader who had fallen off of a pyramid. So, and at the time I thought, well, why are they doing this? Why are they integrating this in with, you're in the same class with talking to neuroscientists and whatever else, with everybody else, these civilians. And I was thinking to myself, well, what is this? Why did they put us in here with all these other people? And then it was like a light bulb went off one day. They're like, "Hey, I'm not going to be an army guy my whole life. When I get out, this is, I'm going to be a civilian. I'm going to be one of these guys." And they were smart enough to look in the future for us and say, "Hey, we got to help these guys reintegrate." Well, that was a long way to say, part of it was they talked about nutrition. So, how do you eat better so you're not eating the things that are going to make it worse? Not so much help it, and once you get to a certain point with a brain injury, you have what you have. So, but they taught, hey, if you eat better, less fatty foods, the standard thing. But they went through and they talked about it. And so I had got this idea or thoughts of food as medicine. How do you use food to help people get better? My brain wasn't working great back then. I couldn't remember what I had for breakfast, but I could remember, lots of other things. Parts of it work perfect, the other parts are a little off. But the thing about food as medicine really resonated with me. So I got out and started looking for, hey, what are the different things that we can do to to help people out? And somehow, within a year or two of finishing that, I ran across uh, an article that was talking about a DARPA program that developed a nutritional supplement that was asked for, and I know you'll know what a mission needs statement is.
Mhm.
In early part of the Iraq War, um, one of the combatant commands sent in a mission needs statement to DARPA, said, "I want a nutritional supplement that increases cognitive performance and physical performance by 30%."
Wow.
That's Yeah,
Huge.
that's a
Mhm.
big ask, but it was funded. And through that program, Oxford University and the National Institutes of Health developed its first, or the first, exogenous ketone. So that what that means is a ketone body that's made outside of the human body. So something that's made outside. Endogenous means in. So when a person is fasting or is on an extremely low carb diet, restricted diet, your body naturally produces uh, its own energy sources, and it's through these ketone bodies. Your liver produces them during starvation and during fasting. Well, this is what they developed: is they developed the a product that was close to what that is. The issue with DARPA was it only, and I say that with a caveat, it only raised physical performance by 3%.
Mm.
But can you imagine Michael Phelps,
Oh yeah,
3%
3%.
faster?
Right.
Can you imagine, this particular thing doesn't work for short twitch muscle, so it wouldn't work for Usain Bolt. But, you know, people that were using this, they were cutting, minutes off of their run times for marathons. They're
Mhm.
cutting time off for rowers. People that did endurance type work.
Mhm.
So I thought it was amazing. I thought it was fantastic. But DARPA stopped the funding on it, so they were looking for a way to commercialize it. So we cold called the lady who invented it, uh, a lady named Dr. Karen Clark at Oxford University, and asked her, "What are you doing with this?"
Mhm.
And she said, "Well, it's kind of funny that you asked that. I'm trying to commercialize it." So, and at the time, the company Nestle was in negotiation with her to put it into market. So, my business partner at the time and I said, "Hey, what's the deal look like? What?" And she sent it to us. She sent the whole deal. And so we sat down and we went through and we redlined a bunch of stuff and said, "Hey, here's some things you need to look at so you don't get in," and send it back to her. About a month later, we get a call from this lady, from Dr. Karen Clark, and she says, "Hey, the deal with Nestle fell through. They were bought out by another company, a pharmaceutical company from overseas." And I said, "Okay, well, what are you doing with it?" She said, "Well, I don't know. Come see us." So we went to Oxford. sat down and started trying to get their exogenous ketone into the U.S., get it so our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guard, guardmen can have something that would help them, get them faster. Well, this ketones have just incredible properties that for the human body. Think about it this way, and this is the way I try to explain it to people the best. It's what God gave you, human beings, as your survival food, as your survival mechanism. So it's what cavemen used to get to their next meal.
Mm.
So it's what you're given after you hadn't eaten for 24, 48 hours. You start to develop these things. Your mind gets clearer. You have more physical endurance. It helps you get to your next meal. So it's nature's food, nature's fuel. Your body creates it from fat.
Can I ask a question on that, Mike? Just
Yeah,
so I'm tracking with you clearly. You're speaking specifically about the endogenous ketones that the body produces in these times of fasting, correct?
correct. Yes, sir.
Is that a form of keto? I have no idea. I've heard the word ketosis and ketones forever, but I don't really know how it fits in the biomolecular body. Is it is it a protein? Is it using proteins? What is it really doing?
It's a water soluble fat molecule
Oh,
is what it is. But it's made by it breaks down fat, or your liver breaks fat down. It uses your body's innate energy stores in fat and breaks it down into usable energy. That's what the liver does to make ketones.
so the
So
exogenous ketone is still a water soluble fat molecule that is made external to the body with some proprietary chemicals or what exactly?
yes, the one that we were working on with Oxford, that is what they did. It's a water soluble short chain fatty acid that creates energy, and it's made outside the body. That's the exogenous part of it. And it produces most of the same effects a ketone that your body produces does. Um, we tried to work with DARPA on that. I mean, with Oxford for several years, probably 3 years, and it just wasn't working out the way that they were trying to formulate the business and do a lot of things. It didn't work out well. So um, instead of being defeated, I came back and just sat down and said, "Hey, if I was going to recreate this and make it myself, what would I do? How would I do it?" So I sat down and had another really good friend of mine, a scientist named Michael Schmidt, who is you know probably one of the smartest people that I know. Sat down and we said and just kind of talked through it. Hey, what would happen if we biochemically did this? And so we designed what we thought would be, all right, here's what the perfect ketone molecule would look like, and here's how you would do it. And then was fortunate enough, went to the science department at Georgia Tech, and they made it for us. Now they made it in a chemical process to start with, but they made it, and it came out exactly like we had drawn it out, and the same way that we thought it was going to work. And then we tested it, and it worked just like we thought. So then my job over the next 6 years was to take it from that chemical manufacturing process and turn it into a natural manufacturing process. So a lot of trial and error and a lot of research and development money went into figuring that process out. But that's how we currently create this. Is It's a complete natural enzyme process. You start with biomaterials and end up at the end with this exogenous ketone.
Wow. Okay. Okay. I'm going to go back to something. If I remember correctly, one of the on the needs request, if I got that correctly, it was a 30% cognitive increase and the 30% performance increase.
Correct. That was
How
what
did
they.
it? That's what they wanted. And you mentioned that this chemical that Oxford produced actually gave a 3% on the performance, but what was the cognitive improvement, if any?
It's it
it's hard to, there was no way for us to figure out and give you a percentage of it. Makes
Okay.
you, your brain work 5% better or whatever it is. But what it does for you is, one, it gives you a mental clarity. So it just makes you see things and do things more focused, more clear. But it does increase your working memory. We've done
Okay.
testing, scientific testing on that. It increases your working memory. So the memory you use every day to do your normal tasks, it increases that. So it's very good for cognition. But the thing about it that I found most attractive is these ketone bodies are neuroprotective, which means that if you
Mhm.
are in a state of ketosis, and that's just a definitive term. It's just it defines what some numbers that some of the biomarkers are in your body. But if you're in ketosis, when you get any type of a head injury,
Mm.
it decreases the long-term effects of it, or what they call the secondary neurometabolic cascade.
Mhm.
It decreases that. So think about it this way. Um, Once an injury happens, you fall down and hit your head.
Mhm.
That physical insult is there. There's not anything that you can do about that. But what that does is it starts a process in your brain where your brain says, I'm hurt. I need all of the energy sent to me. And so all the glucose gets taken up in the brain really quickly. Or your body has its own checks and balances, its own mechanisms for when things like this happen. But when it normally breaks down sugar or glucose as fuel, it's a long process. It takes 11 different steps, biological steps to break it down, and it produces other chemicals, FADH, a bunch of other chemicals, including lactic acid, pyruvate. So it creates these things in your brain. Well, normally your body uses those for other things. The pyruvate gets put into the citric acid cycle, gets turned into energy. The lactic acid gets used somewhere else. Well, what happens when you get injured is your brain is now on hyperactive mode. So it is burning through this fuel very quickly, and your brain doesn't have the ability to then get rid of the rest of those chemicals. So they just start building up and building up and building up, and then it signals the brain cells, the neural cells, to start dying. It sends
Mhm.
that signaling mechanism and says, "Hey, something's wrong up here. We're overloaded with these chemicals. We need to start dying off because something's broken in the cell." Once that process starts, it's a long cascade of bad things, and that's where the secondary effects of head injuries come from. It's that long, once the brain cells start dying, and those processes is where the headaches, the I your inability to be in bright places, different things that happen. That's where they get worse. But if you're in ketosis or you have ketones, your brain uses those. It prefers to use that energy because it's very efficient. It breaks down. There's no other chemicals that come out of it. It breaks down into those the molecules that then go into the citric acid cycle, the Krebs cycle, and become energy. So it uses it quicker, and it doesn't produce any of these other things that then signal the brain to start dying off. So that's the mechanism behind the neuroprotective part. Your brain produces these other molecules, and that's what causes the injury when it's breaking down sugar. What doesn't do that with ketones.
It
So
sounds
that's
like
the part of it.
it sounds like something that, as a former infantryman and a marathon runner, the last lactic acidosis and those pains associated with that, is that similar to what the brain's doing?
It's very similar. That's a good way to kind of look at it. It is a way to make it. But yes, that's what it is. It's very similar to that. It's just what signal it's given. Like the lactic acid that builds up in your skeletal muscles when you run. You do marathons or any really strenuous event. That's that lactic acid buildup is what causes the soreness and everything later. Well, if you're using the beauty of using ketones or in being on a ketogenic diet is you have that extra energy out there and it doesn't produce as much lactic acid. So some people use these products or people that are in ketosis from ketogenic diet, they can, I know you go to the gym, so you can only work your arms out every 2 or 3 days, every third day. You only work your chest or your legs out every third day. Well, if you're not producing the lactic acid that's causing the soreness, you could do that every day or every other day
Wow.
versus having to wait 3 or 4 days for those muscles to recover because it doesn't produce as much lactic acid. It's pretty ingenious process. Again, it's your body's survival mechanism. It's a survival food. So if you have this stuff, all those benefits you're getting them from this ketones.
And I assume we're roughly the same age. Is that non-age dependent? I mean, can someone
Yep.
maybe our age really benefit from this, or is this something for the 20-year-old athlete that's out there?
No, this is good for anybody, even children. Um, so it's but obviously people that are our age benefit from it very much. I mean, it helps you think better. It gives you some good mental clarity. Um, so yes, it would. But for those athletes who are really pushing the edge, those really high performance athletes, um, it's very important. And endurance athletes, that's where your money's at for this stuff. If you're a marathon runner or even somebody who does long swims, whatever it is, rowers, anybody that does those repetitive endurance type events, this is an amazing fuel for you. Absolutely amazing fuel for you.
Okay, good. I got some questions coming in. I want to jump to these
Yep.
real quick. When you were doing a lot of your research, Mike, plant-based proteins versus animal-based proteins, what did you see in regards to that?
Um, well, what we decided to do was for our business and for what we're doing is we're trying to be as sustainable as possible. So plant-based proteins are what we wanted to use, what I thought was best for us to use. Um, One, you have a bigger population that will use it, not can use it. Everybody can use it, but a bigger population if you don't use animal proteins in your products. You know, a lot bigger population of people who are maybe vegetarian or whatever. You can pick. They'll be able to use your product as
Well, it
well.
seems cheaper and more not just sustainable, but scalable too, to use plant-based proteins.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely.
This is another one that's very close to my mother passed away relatively young from Lewy body's dementia, and Alan Kelly says he was asking about proteins relative to traumatic brain injuries and treatments for dementia. Can they overlap? Because on his mother's side of the family, 8 out of 10 siblings, including his mother, died from dementia. What are you seeing on that front? That has my attention.
We're actually seeing quite a bit of really interesting and good things coming out of this. So one thing is what this is it's a food. If you want to narrow it down to its smallest thing, it's a food that fuels your body. But for people who what we've seen is people who have especially Parkinson's
Mm,
um, and people with Alzheimer's. This is not made to cure anything, but
mhm.
what it does is it gives them better quality of life. So I have seen and literally brought tears to my eyes watching a Parkinson's patient do the Parkinson's exam. It's just a movement type exam that they do to see how much they're being affected by the disease process. So and watching them after taking 25 grams of our ketone and
Mhm.
seeing those shakes go away for a
Wow.
couple of hours, and it's not permanent, obviously, but
Mhm.
for a few hours, you can pick your coffee cup up without worrying about spilling it, or you could sign your name again where somebody could read it, where people who have Parkinson's, people who have these diseases, understand how big that is, how big of a thing it is to something as small as being able to write and read what you're writing. Um, and those things are really obviously near and dear to somebody who's got a very significant chance of developing early onset Alzheimer's based on the blast injuries.
Mhm.
So it's very important to me, obviously, and a lot of people that we work with. But people with cognitive decline, it's not going to reverse it by any means.
Right.
But what it'll do is it'll give you a better day. You're going to have a better day that day, though, when you're using these things. Um, so yeah.
Well, I think our military, man, this needs to be in every MRE pack because on the combat arms side of the house, whether you're pulling a lanyard on a 155 or you're at a breach point and you got an explosive breacher doing his thing, and I mean just anything and everything you could imagine. Even if you never see combat, if you do 20 years of having a 155 go off next to your head, I got to imagine, Mike, that's doing long term damage, right?
Absolutely. It's called multiple subconcussive hits. So
Mhm.
is what we've been talking about it as,
Okay.
and that's what it is. It's that blast injury from being a mortarman
Mhm.
or being an artilleryman. It's standing next to those breaches. It's doing normal training every day. Throwing hand grenades as an infantryman. it, those things, you can only throw them so far. You still feel those concussive blasts from that, and just normal training. I mean, how many times do you bang your head even with your helmet on? How
Right.
many times you bang your head going through a door or getting into an armored vehicle, whatever they are? Those little things. Yeah.
No, I'm just like, yeah, I got my hand raised, the Mike. I totally hear you, man. And how is how are the TBIs that you're seeing with military guys and gals any different from, say, CTE that the NFL has been plagued by?
Um.
Are they the same
C,
thing or not?
no, CTE is a little bit different, but the symptoms are all the same.
Hmm.
Um, and that's the one thing that I don't think a lot of people realize is those, the TBI that you get from a blast injury and the TBI you get from falling and hitting your head, they're the same. When you look at it as from a biochemical standpoint, a metabolic standpoint, they're the same. Your brain reacts the same way, whether it was a blast or a different head injury, for the most part. I don't want somebody calling in a bit and saying, "Oh, that's not exactly true," But
Mhm.
for the most part, that as far as your brain injuries go, they're the same. Those processes are the same. The symptoms are the same, and how you get better is also the same. Your brain has to retrain itself how to think. It has to develop new neural pathways for the things that used to be easy for you. You have to figure out different ways to get your brain to reconnect those neural pathways.
Let's talk about that for a minute because in training folks with firearms, just part of what we do, we talk a lot about, or we understand that there's a myelination process to developing these
Mhm.
techniques, right? And the more myelinated the process, the more smoother and more, you can do it to the subconscious competence, right? So is this ketones in any way, or let me say this another way, that myelination process, does that stave off some of the effects of the traumatic brain injury or not necessarily?
No, now this is this is personal opinion based
Mhm.
on some of the things that I've seen in my community. So we trained every single day
Mhm.
the same way that you go to war. So we
Mhm.
didn't change anything. The training was the same. But you went down and you did your job and you did it over and over and over again. it builds up for people that train that often and do the things just like you're talking about as a law enforcement guy, training with your weapon, training with the different things that you do. Those tactics, techniques, procedures, things all become muscle memory.
Mhm.
And so your body does develop things like that. It also develops, um, it I, I'm trying to find the best way to say this where um, it doesn't sound in any way arrogant or anything like that. But if you train yourself to be extremely resilient,
Mhm.
then you even those things that would normally uh, cripple somebody else, and I mean that not in a bad way, but would
Mhm.
really put somebody down, you're going to bounce back from it a lot quicker.
Mhm.
I've seen that with a lot of our people. I mean, you- you're supposed to be, rehabbing for 9 months for something, and 3 months later, these guys are going back to full duty because they just really put all their effort into it, and they are resilient from the training that they do. Like you said, every day, the repetitive motions,
Mhm.
the doing the right thing the right way each time gets, you learn it. People, I had a friend that used to that worked with me when I was an instructor that would say, you know, somebody says, practice makes perfect. Well, that's not true.
Mhm.
Perfect practice makes perfect. Doing it right every single time, that's what makes you really good. It's not, people always talk about, being a Green Beret or doing the stuff I did in the special mission unit. Um, they say, oh man, that's high speed, that's really out there. In reality, all we've done is perfected the basics. But that word means a lot. Perfected the basis. So shooting, moving, and communicating on a very basic level, but doing it so it's precision every time.
Yep.
Those are the things that but it does build resilience, and it helps you recover better, recover faster. So like you said, you explained it better, the myelination of your neurons, and those
Mhm.
are the things that that's how it works. But why it works is because of, you're more resilient. That's what it is.
Yeah. One of the things that when I was a combat instructor at the School of Infantry, man, I took those privates and we did immediate action drills again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And they're probably like, "What? Why the hell are we?" Sergeant Brown got us doing this. Everybody else are not. They're not doing it to this level. I'm like, because it's all about brilliance in the basics. I've had a lot
Yeah.
of friends at the Combat Applications Group, CAG, ACE, whatever the hell their name is these days. And it's the same. They're doing fire team rushes just like any infantry unit, only at a level that you can't imagine. And when they're laying down fire, it's not indiscriminate. Like it is precision fire.
Yeah. That's and uh, that's what makes units that train that way. That's
Mhm.
what separates them. And it's not necessarily that all of them are soldiers. The
Mhm.
soldiers that or sailors, airmen, Marines, and we had you know all of it.
Mhm.
Um, they just train to to where they're the best at what they do. That's what it is, and it's pretty impressive to see. And then the quick story or anecdote. Um, as an instructor, you get to watch these young guys come in, and one, they're the peak, they're the top of
Are you talking about OTC or
yeah,
something?
OTC instructor,
Okay.
yeah. So as when you get to the guys that are coming in are the they're specifically selected. They've gone through a hard process just to get to school, just to come and learn.
Mhm.
And then you still have to pass those blocks. But the guys would go through, and then obviously as you go through, as an instructor, you start off. Everybody starts with the basics, and you build and build and build until when you finish, these guys are at a level where they're ready to go and start their job. Everybody, a lot of people think, well, I went through the school, I know how to do it. Well, that's not how it works. That just
Mhm.
gives you a ticket to start work.
Mhm.
When you get to work, that's where the real training begins. That's where you learn. So after, when the class would be just about finished, they'd finished their close quarters battle, training and everything else, I would get one of the other team leaders to come in and say, "Hey, take your team and run them through this one building, and I want to sit the guys that are about to graduate. I want to just sit them down and let them listen to you work." And so, one of the team leaders would come in, and their team would go in, and they would do an assault on the whole building, clear it, come back down, and it'd be over in literally in minutes.
Yeah.
And these guys are like, "Man, we'll never be that fast."
Right.
I said, "Hey, man, you will be. Every
Mm-hmm.
one of those guys were where you were at. I just wanted you to understand that as good as you feel right now, and as
Mm-hmm.
pumped up as you are about, going and walking across the hall and
Mm-hmm.
going to work, you are just getting started.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're going to be in a year. This is
Mm-hmm.
where you are now." So, but it was interesting for them, and you'd see a light bulb come on. They're like, "Oh my goodness, I still have so much to learn." And that's the big thing about it. A lot of people don't realize that these schools just teach you the basic stuff. You have to go back and apply these things
Right.
where you work. If you go back, you can't go to sniper school and then go back to your team and never pick up your sniper rifle again. I mean, you got to keep using it as often as possible, as much as you can, to be really proficient.
That's another problem we have in the military and law enforcement. This idea of the 50-hour SME, and for those that don't habla, you can go to a
Yeah,
50-hour course, and now you're supposed to come back to your unit or your department. You're the subject matter expert, and then your unit or whatever doesn't, or your department doesn't need it until it's annual training time, and we're doing in service, and like, oh, Brown's the SME, get him up here. I'm like, bro, I ain't touched this in almost a year.
right.
So you're so accurate to say, and that we say that about when you receive your black belt, this means you're ready to learn. It doesn't mean
Right.
you're a master. You just now you're ready to really truly learn something. You've jumped through all those gates, and I remember Tom Spooner, another Delta assaulter, saying in a podcast recently, he's like, "I came out of OTC, and I'm thinking I'm a master of CQB. I got this," and he said, I got my team leaders like, "Yeah, bro, just throw Kimlots and try to keep up. Just you don't even need your rifle. You can't move at our speed." And he's like, "Oh, bullshit." And he said, first time they made that breach, he's like, "I'm just throwing Kimlots and trying to keep up."
Yeah, Tom's a great guy, and a good friend.
Yeah. Um, so the ketones that you have over there, are they the one that you and your team at Tecton have developed? Is that something that's proprietary? Can you patent something like that?
Um, Absolutely, it's proprietary, and because what we have is, uh, we call it nature identical. It's identical to what your body produces.
Mm,
Um, that specific thing can't be patented, but the process to develop to make it, so you can't patent a molecule. You couldn't patent hydrogen. You know what I mean?
right,
Um,
right.
but if you're using it in a way that nobody else is, or you're producing in a way that nobody else is, that part can be patented. So that's the part that we've patented. We've also patented um, the ketones in combination with other very important micronutrients and macronutrients that your body can have that use, and we've patented a way to nano encapsulate the well, this molecule and others,
Hmm.
using green technology. So plant-based green technology, we nano encapsulate it. It makes it more efficient, and it gives you the ability to target where you want it to be taken up in the body.
Okay, wow. Um, uh, Tony has a question. Says lactic acid is a result of anaerobic metabolism. How does ketones work with that process?
Well, what it is it's not about the production of lactic acid and the way that it's built up there. Lactic acid buildup is a byproduct of glycolysis. It's byproduct of your muscles and your body using glucose as a fuel, and
And
that's
glucose is
where.
basically like sugar, right? Mike?
Right, that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's sugar. Well, any carbohydrate breaks down into glucose, so it becomes sugar.
Mhm.
And it's a byproduct of your body breaking that down. Well, if you're using ketones as fuel, that's not one of the byproducts when it breaks down. There's no byproducts when it breaks down. So it goes straight through, the breakdown from its state as a beta hydroxybutyrate, which is one of the ketone bodies, breaks it down it's 3 steps, and then it goes right into the citric acid cycle as acetyl CoA. So
Now, your company, I think I saw online. I don't want to. I'm going to say energy drink just because that's what people would associate that kind of product with. But are you guys? Is that commercially viable now? The drink that you guys have put together?
it is, yes. We've been selling it now for just over a year. We have it available on Amazon and on our own website. And what we've done recently for the past probably 6 or 8 months is we're transitioning to doing a lot more nutritional supplements versus just those drinks. The drinks were I'm not going to say a quick way, but the fastest way to get the product to a consumer. And so we started with that, but we've just recently partnered with some really great people that are taking it as a nutritional supplement. We're going to have some little 2-ounce shots or 3-ounce shots, 4-ounce shots, and they each have different properties that they're designed for. So we'll have one that's for GLP-1 support. So ketones work the same way as that GLP-1 agonists work as well. A lot of the same benefits you get from those GLP-1 agonists you get from ketones. So it's a synergistic product with people who are on GLP-1 therapy, which is these semaglutides, Wegovy and Mounjaro, Trulicity, those things. It's a really good adjunct to those because, as people know, one, they're extremely expensive, but they work very well. They do work very well, but they're expensive, and long-term use of them, there's side effects that people are coming up with. Well, this is a way that you could not just get off of those semaglutide or GLP-1 agonists cold turkey. You could use this product, and then it will help support you with it. So that's another one. Two things that are really that our product has that other products in this field don't have is, one, we're registered as a generally recognized as safe food, and we were just awarded just not quite a year ago a new dietary ingredient notice. So people that don't understand the FDA, vitamin E doesn't even have a new dietary ingredient notice on it. So it was a very strenuous process, very hard to do, but our ketone has its own new dietary ingredient notice, which is a big deal with the FDA. It's not quite like saying it's FDA certified, but it's about as close as you can get for a nutritional supplement.
You mentioned earlier about the Parkinsonian patient that the taking your ketones is really the tremors were less, et cetera, et cetera. And that's fascinating. I think you gave them 25 milligrams.
Right. That was what, grams.
25 grams. Okay. Is there a toxicity level or anything like that? Like, the reason why if 25 grams produce that kind of result, I mean, what about 50 grams? I mean, why not ingest more, I guess?
Because at a certain threshold, your body just it just passes through your body. So, and that's where we found that sweet spot. If you're wanting to give a really large dose like that, you don't need that dose to get benefits from it. You can get benefits from this at very low doses even. But that dose, especially for somebody who has a condition you're trying to treat, between 25 and 30 grams is kind of our sweet spot. Once you get over that, your body then starts to not metabolize, and it just goes right through you. So one thing that I talk about to people when we're talking about ketones, and people who use ketones or are in ketosis or do a ketogenic diet, a lot of them use these test strips that urine test strips. So you dip it in your sample, and it changes colors, it turns pink, whatever. What I tell guys is, well, if you're seeing that on that strip, then whatever made that come out on that strip is wasted. It it passed through your kidneys and it's gone. So that if you're using that as your measure, probably not the best way to do it. Do a blood test, a finger stick test or something if you really want to see what your ketones are. If you're using that strip and you're seeing it, then that means your body didn't use it. You just wasted it. So that's kind of why that 25 gram mark. Once you get over, 25, 30 grams, your body starts to just wash it through and you don't get the benefits from it. So uh, that's where that sweet spot came in.
That's a great point. That makes total sense. If you're
And
seeing it in your urine, probably not a good thing. It's
yeah,
already
and
flushed out.
and you asked about toxicity. When
Mhm,
we did our filing for the GRAS, the generally recognized as safe, we had to
mhm,
do 14 days, 28 days, and 90-day toxicity tests on this product. And during the 90-day test, we were given it at 200 times the normal dose that a human could take. And the reason we stopped there is you physically couldn't give the animals any more. They just couldn't take any more in.
mm.
So 200 times that dose, the a 10-gram dose is what we based it off of. 200 times that, and there were zero toxic effects. I mean, the paper's published. It's in Nutrients magazine. The paper was published with all this toxicity data, but up to 200 times the amount, and there was not a single side effect that we saw from that in any organ, and in any one of its biomarkers.
Hmm. Okay, so as I understand it, your let's talk about the drink for just a moment. I
Mhm.
imagine it comes in multiple flavors. You're going to get better muscle recovery. You're going to get some sort of metabolic boost, I would imagine, greater cognitive focus. Do you do this in conjunction with sugars and caffeine or anything like that?
No, we don't use any sugar, any caffeine. Now we are considering putting out a shot, a smaller concentrated shot with caffeine in, because we've
Mhm.
been asked. Our customers are asking us to put just a small amount of caffeine in it.
What about
Um,
B12 instead of caffeine or in conjunction with that? You haven't looked at that?
we have there, and our new products that are coming out are actually have some really good formulations that are built in with other products that are synergistic, like berberine and B12 and magnesium, and there's a lot of things that we've put together in there. But specifically, the reason is you get a quick boost from caffeine,
Mhm.
and people want to feel something
Yeah.
besides just, hey, well, everything, I'm thinking better. I'm a lot sharper today. Instead of having that feeling, they want to feel the fact that they just had, basically like drinking a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
But that's
Especially
something that our customers have asked us for.
these guys that are getting jacked up on pre-workout, you know, which is terrible.
It
Uh,
is.
ask me how I know I got AFib from not pre-workout, but pushing red line in your heart for 20 something years.
Yep. You short circuit it.
Yeah. And
Yep.
there we go. So Mike, I've really enjoyed our conversation. Before I let you go, we may have to do a round two because I think we're leaving some meat on the table here.
Yeah.
But walk me through your continued service to the veterans, man. I know you're doing a lot of stuff with charities and nonprofit boards that you sit on. Tell me about that.
Well, it's funny that you asked that right now, because I'm sitting in a room down in Grand Isle, Louisiana, because we have a veteran event here. We're taking 47 combat wounded or disabled vets
Mhm.
offshore fishing this weekend. So we
Nice.
got about 150 people here helping put this thing together and get everybody out there. But um, I got involved with disabled veteran nonprofits right before I got out of the service, got right before I retired. So in 2009, I started working with it. And the biggest reason is I needed something else to do for me, a mission for
Yeah.
me to have. Everybody transitions differently. And I know as a transitioned, uh, and I mean that, transitioning from military to civilian world,
Mhm.
as a person who's done that transition already, you know that, I mean, there's a lot of things that go through your brain and everything when you do that. I mean, for 25 years, it sounds crazy, but I knew what I was going to wear to work every day. I knew my schedule roughly every day. I was going to go to work, I was going to work out, I was going to start doing, I had a schedule for what I did, and everything was regimented. And then one day I signed a piece of paper, and now I'm sitting on my couch, and there's no mission. There's nothing else from what's next. What's the next thing that I'm going to do? Because I really don't have it.
Mm.
I'm trying to do some things on the work side, but at the end of the day, you have to have something that's going to promote who you are and what you do and what you believe in. And that's what it was. I just couldn't find, I needed a new mission. And as a veteran that was, I'm and you talk to a lot of these guys, guys like Tom Spooner, and um it's a big thing to go from being a commando to not having anything at all to do.
Yeah.
That's a big transition. And so to keep myself from going down that dark rabbit hole, I had to find something else to do, and it was helping veterans, helping other veterans, and I'll tell you, it's more rewarding to me to come sit on the sidelines and do this and help them and put these things together and give them a chance to meet people that really appreciate what they've done and their service. I get more out of that than I ever did going on the trips, going on a fishing trip or a hunting trip or a hiking trip. I get so much more out of being on the backside of that and helping than I ever did actually doing the event.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your service and for what you're doing, Mike. I mean it. And like, we have a membership. We have American Warrior Society members literally all over the world. We didn't think about that when we started this company back in 2014. And but we have an annual camp coming up. And so if you're listening to the podcast, you're like, well, I need to check into that. Click the links in today's show notes. I'm also going to have some links to Mike's products. If you want to check out what they're doing over there, pick up some of those products. You want to get the ketones. It's going to give you faster recovery, better metabolism, better cognitive functioning. I know that I'm going to get off here and buy some because I think that's another thing as we age, those of us that are top A guys and gals, and most people that are watching and listening are definitely in that category. You want to get that edge of performance, whether it's shooting, how do I get better? How do I win the next match? How do I do whatever? I think the ketones and some of the things you guys are doing, man, is something I'm going to look into.
Well, I love that, and I appreciate it very much. We look at it, like I told you, as a food. This is what I consider, and I learned this from other people, but this is a fourth macronutrient. Fats, carbohydrates, uh, and proteins, and then what do you have? Ketones. I mean,
Yep.
that's what your body produces when you don't have any of the other three. So it's a macronutrient. It's something that your body could use. You could take, you could use up to 300 grams of this every day. I mean, your liver can produce 180 to 300 grams of this. So
Well,
anyway,
Mark has a question before I let you go.
yep,
Mike, Mark wants to know type 2 diabetes, any benefits?
absolutely. The ketones that are in there are it's the same ketones that would, if you have too many of them if you're in diet, that you're a diabetic. If you have too many, it can develop ketoacidosis. But definitively, ketoacidosis is when your amount of ketones in your body are very, very high, like in 19, 20. And people who understand ketones would understand what I'm talking about. Our product, as much as you could physically put into your body, wouldn't raise your level up above maybe 6 or 7. So no way to get ketoacidosis. But what it does is it doesn't have a glucose response. So if you're using ketones, if you're in ketosis, even if you eat a cupcake or whatever, your body's not going to spike the glucose and then obviously spike the insulin. So instead, you get a short spike and then it levels right back out. And that's just a signaling mechanism from the ketones.
Wow, great. Mike, I got to get you back on. I think
Hey, I'm here for you, man. You let me know when. I'll be glad to come back on.
okay. Yeah, I'll get with your people and we'll get that going. Alan Kelly says, great show. Gotta go. Mike, thanks for this information. Mark says, I'm 42, still considered type. He says he's a 4.2, but still considered type 2. Yeah, I think there's so much to talk about. I want to get into nutrition next time. We talked
Good.
about we talked about that. I think that again, at my age, my diet has always been my problem. I will work, but when it comes to Rich and eat these foods, I'm like,
Yeah, right.
But so I definitely want to talk to you about that. Thank you so much for being on the show, Mike. Where can people find you and what you guys are doing?
Well, for what we're doing on the veteran side, I work with two different organizations mainly. One of them is called Wounded War Heroes. and if you want to go to their website, woundedwarheroes.org. And that's a veteran nonprofit that does recreational therapy. And then I work with another group out of Florida called Combat Veterans to Careers. Absolutely fabulous program. They've got nearly 4,000 alumni now that they've worked with, and these people are absolutely amazing. They take veterans who are struggling, they bring them to Florida, take them down there, they get them educated, get them some good financial counseling, get them back on their feet, housing, jobs, whatever they need. So it's a kind of a full service organization, and absolutely amazing. And the man who runs it is a retired Master Sergeant named David Booth. We have become great friends over the years. Same thing. He was an Army medic, 68 series Army medic. And just his heart's in the right place. It's all about helping the veterans out. And he's been doing this for many years now. I think he's at the 10 or 11 year mark that he's been running his program. So absolutely amazing programs that they run. And that's Combat Veterans to Careers and Wounded War Heroes.
And if they want to pick up your Tecton Ketone energy drink, where do they need to go for that?
The website is Tecton Life, TECTONLIFE, tectonlife.com. That's where you can get a lot of good information about it, about the ketones and what we're doing, and also where you can purchase product right now.
Awesome. Once again, Mike, I can't thank you enough for being on the show today. Stay tuned for round 2, guys. I'll get with Mike's people. We'll see if we can set it up. Until then, remember the fight is coming. Be ready.